Hello, welcome to Featherwood Farm. My name is Darcy, and I am a gardener and first-year flower farmer in Okemos, Michigan, Zone 5B. All of my videos up until now have been mostly focused on the yard and the landscape and the gardens out there and the animals, things like that. And today I'm excited because I want to talk about the cut flower side of things. So now that spring is officially here, which in Michigan is pretty fleeting, we get really big swings in temperatures and it's really unpredictable, a lot of rain. But today is absolutely beautiful. It was like 50 degrees out, sunny, clear skies. And that means it's time to get out there and get to work. So my first order of business, I have 15 yards of compost that is going to be delivered. That is going to go mostly into the cut flower garden and then also into the raised beds that I've assembled. I also have another chip drop request in for some more arborist chips. Those are going to be used in the pathways in the cut flower garden. In the past, I have used the arborist chips in the paths and they work really well at suppressing the weeds and stuff. Not much grows through them if I lay them on like 5-6 inches thick. And I've also in the past grown my veggies and flowers in just mounded beds of soil and used straw as a natural mulch. But I'm dealing with a pretty aggressive thistle problem out there and the straw is not cutting it when it comes to preventing that from growing through. So in the actual cut beds, I will be using landscape fabric with holes cut in them. So my current growing space is not very large. As I mentioned before, it's about 2,400 square foot that is all fenced in over there. And I really was trying to be very thoughtful and plan it out on paper how to maximize this space the best. And I'm going to have stupidly narrow paths. They're only going to be a foot wide. And I won't be able to get a cart or a wheelbarrow down there, and that kind of stinks, but it's just going to be a temporary thing because, as I've mentioned, we are going to expand the cut flower garden out from the back. I just don't think that we're going to be able to get to that project this growing season. I anticipate being able to get to that and complete that in the fall and then utilize that new space next growing season. So the paths being this small is really just a temporary thing. Once everything is expanded a little bit more, I can open those up. So inside this fenced in portion, I'm going to have 22 beds that are each 4 foot wide by 18 foot long, and those are going to be divided down the center by a 5 foot wide kind of main path, and I kept it that width to accommodate the tractor being able to get through. In the past, every time I've had soil or mulch or even gravel delivered, I have to use a shovel and my muscles in my gorilla cart and do it all by hand, and unloading 15 yards of soil on a cart through squishy clay it's awful, and my muscles are very happy to have the tractor this year be able to do that for me. I've numbered all of the beds so that I can just make note-taking a little bit easier and be able to quickly reference what I'm referring to in the notes, what bed, and already know like what is growing there. Each of these sticky notes contains the plant name, the spacing that they require, the days to maturity, and what type of cut flower it is. I also put a little star in the corners of things that can be direct sowed and that I will be direct sowing. So I obviously don't have enough space to dedicate an entire bed to a single plant, so I tried to be very thoughtful in making sure I combined plants with the same spacing requirements and trying to keep days to maturity close to one another. So I am a beginning flower farmer in like the official sense. This will be the first year that I'm growing at this scale and that I will be selling and trying to market my flowers. But it is not the first year that I have grown flowers. And previously, I've never put this much forethought into things. I just sort of, I tried to follow the packets as best I could, but, if I was a little late to getting some things started, it was no big deal because it's just for me. Or if I wasn't keeping up on irrigating and I didn't fertilize and no succession plantings and things like that, never really mattered much. This year is obviously going to be a little bit different, and I tried very hard to kind of set myself up for success and give myself a really good plan to follow. But as can be expected, I did run into a couple of hiccups. My first hiccup started in the end of January, beginning of February, I can't quite remember now, but I have had, this would have been the 5th year, a polycarbonate greenhouse, just a small one, that I've used every year. And this year I purchased dozens of ranunculus corms and anemone corms, and I was going to plant those into the greenhouse under some low tunnels. And after a couple of pretty severe winter storms, it obliterated my greenhouse. It's just a pile over there that I've been slowly working on cleaning up. The aluminum was bent and broken and hardware went everywhere. Fortunately, most of all the actual polycarbonate panels themselves did not break and are all sound, and I plan on repurposing them to build cold frames, I think. So I didn't have a place that I could put these ranunculus and anemones that I had already been pre-sprouting, and they needed to get into something, so I hopped over to my local nursery and was looking for bulb crates. They only had 4 available, which was nowhere near the amount that I needed, so I just started putting them in nursery pots that I had around, and I've never grown either ranunculus or anemone before, so I have nothing to compare it to. The plants are healthy, they're growing, things are fine. My biggest concerns are just them being overcrowded and not being quite as productive, but when life gives you lemons. The second kind of hiccup was in the space that I used to start my seeds in. It's a heated workshop in the back of our garage, which is just a wonderful space to have, and I'm really grateful for it. I had a bunch of trays out there and some soil blocks, and a mole got in somehow. I know it was a mole because I physically saw it, and kind of scuttled up the shelves and through some of my soil blocks and across some of my trays and destroyed not a ton, but a decent amount of seedlings. So it was pretty sad. Fortunately, it's just seedlings and it's not much loss. I lost a little bit of time, a little bit of money, but I just planted more to try to compensate for that. So that was hiccup number 2. Fortunately, I think those are the only big problems I've run into. Everything else is kind of to be expected little things, kind of weather related and stuff like that. So with these obstacles kind of addressed and behind me, it's pretty much just full steam ahead, and things are going according to this beautiful plan I've laid out for myself. To help, set myself up as best I could, I created a spreadsheet that includes all of the plant varieties that I want to grow, as well as when I should start the seeds, how many to start, what trays to plant them in, if I'm doing any successions of those, and when those would go out, when things are being transplanted out, and so on. Just kind of all of the information that I could cram into it, I did. I know that most advice is to start small and kind of grow from a smaller scale and start with fewer varieties. I did not follow that sage advice. I apparently like to make things more difficult for myself. Because I've been growing for a few years personally now, I have quite a collection of seeds that I've accumulated, and they're all, quarter packets left or half packets left of seeds, so not very many, and I just kind of wanted to start using them up before they start going bad. So I'm using up those as well as the new purchases that I got. I tried to do it in kind of the smartest way I could think of, and so I went onto Pinterest, looked at a bunch of bouquets and arrangements, and picked out a select few that really spoke to me and tried to reverse engineer them, see exactly what they were comprised of. And so I ordered a lot of my new seeds based off of that so that I could have kind of cohesive bouquets. Of course, I love plants, so I do have a few that were just spontaneous purchases that I'm excited about. And it's not going to just be seeds that I have. I've mentioned before I have a lot of perennials, so I have echinacea, rudbeckias, some heliopsis, liatris, peonies that are actually this year. The plants themselves are older, but I transplanted them from the backyard. They were planted by previous owners, and I transplanted them 3 years ago to the front yard where they receive much more sun and are growing way better. So this year would actually be the third year that they would be in that spot and that I should be able to cut from them. So that's pretty exciting. I also have like ladies' mantle for foliage. I want to use some heuchera. Their little stem flowers I think would be really lovely in arrangements, as well as a lot of grasses and stuff that I can use. The way that I'm addressing this first year is mostly just as a learning experience. I don't have much at stake, so I just want to really pay attention to how things grow, what I most enjoy growing, what I don't like growing, or what doesn't grow well for me. Things that my customers really respond positively to. I want to keep all of this in mind moving forward and apply all of that to future years of growing. If my garden were, a lot larger, I think all of this variety would be really difficult to keep up with. Because it's such a small space, though, I'm not too concerned about it being too overwhelming for me. Diving into what it is that I am actually growing, it's a pretty long list, so I won't go through every single thing, just kind of the highlight reel of what I'm most excited about. I tried to, keep a really good variety of focal flowers, accent flowers, foliage, fillers, things like that. And I guess to start with would be zinnias. Might even be a little cliche, but I love zinnias. There's so many different varieties, so many colors, there's different sizes. They're just so fun. They're so easy to grow. They're forgiving, and they're so floriferous. They're such high producers. Like, what's not to love about that? Next would be sunflowers, which are a staple. In the past, I think I've only ever grown branching varieties, and this year I have a few branching varieties, but I have maybe 8 or more from the Pro Cut series, a bunch of different colorways that are just, one cut that I'm pretty excited to try out. And then of course dahlias. I'm pretty new to dahlias. I've only grown them, this would be my 3rd year. I've grown from tubers, from a handful of tubers. I think I purchased all of them from Longfields last year, as well as from seed, which it was really fun, just seeing the variety that you get and the colors and the shapes. And some are just absolutely beautiful. Some couldn't be cut flower at all. The stems were not strong enough. But they were really great to have in the garden in general, because what I didn't cut, the pollinators loved. And every morning I would wake up and there would be little bumblebees asleep in the centers. It's adorable. And then kind of some of the other focal and accent flowers. I will have a white swan marigold, which would be the first time I've grown the white variety. I've grown cocoa gold and a giant yellow in the past. And if you can get over the smell, I love marigolds. They're so ruffly, so textured. They last a really long time in the vase, which is great. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the white ones look like. Then I'll have asters, more annual rudbeckias, some Scabiosa, mallow, bachelor's buttons, calendula. I'm growing clarkia for the first time this year, and it has yielded excellent germination rates for me so far, so that's exciting. And then of course the ranunculus and the anemones. I'll be growing a few different types of celosias, some plume ones and some new to me ones from the Selway series. And then I will also have amaranth. I've grown amaranth in the past and I don't know if I like it. I think I like it. It's something that was difficult for me to work into bouquets. It might work better in arrangements than in bouquets. Maybe I'm just not growing the right kind. I grew a tassel kind, a couple of tassel kinds, but I can't not grow them. I love the way they look, so it's something that I keep around. I have similar feelings about Strawflower. I don't know if I like Strawflower or not. I do dry flowers and make wreaths and things from that, and obviously Strawflower is perfect for that and works really well, and it's like invaluable when it comes to a dried flower, but as a fresh cut flower, I don't know if I like it. So I'm growing a couple different colorways this year, and we'll see. We'll see if I'm able to incorporate it into bouquets and arrangements and be pleased with the results. I'm really excited about growing some annual phlox. I have 3 colorways. I can only remember the name of one, creme brulee. The other one is cherry something, and then one is a purple one. But they look like they will just be wonderful, kind of dainty flowered fillers, and I'm really looking forward to adding those into some bouquets. I will be growing Nigella, and I grew Nigella for the first time 4 years ago, I think, when I used to have my cut flowers in the front there, and I only had 2 or 3 plants, I think, and every year since then they just have freely self-seeded in that area up there, and I don't really have to actually plant anymore, but I got a different variety this year than what's growing up there. So I'm going to try that, and then I let that stuff grow and I harvest from that. And that I really like for a really textural interest in bouquets, and that is also a really fun dry flower as well. And then I'll have some kind of classic things, some Ami, Magus, Dara, a few different types of grasses. I have like a foxtail millet, quaking oat grass, a type of wheat that I'm growing. Cress, there will be, I think, 4 different varieties of cress, and it's one of my favorite fillers. I'm growing Artemisia. I grew that for the first time last year, and the scent is heavenly, and that's also really great for dried flowers. For me, it was kind of tedious to work with, but I can overlook that. I grew globe amaranth last year, and I love the look. I love any sort of spherical element that you can add to a bouquet. It's just such a different interest, a visual interest to add. I had a really big issue with the rabbits eating that. They would single out that plant and just tear it all down and eat all of the little globes. So I'm hoping that I can address that issue before it becomes an issue this year. One of my favorite foliage plants are basils. I have grown basil, I think, every year that I've been growing cut flowers, and it's not a very big plant, but they can be cut on pretty heavily. They're really easy to grow, for me at least, and there's a lot of variety. There are purple varieties, some really dark foliage varieties. They obviously have a scent to them, which I don't mind at all. And then if you try Mrs. Burns' lemon basil, it is an amazing lemony scent. It is wonderful. And if you wait until things kind of flower, they have cute little ditzy flowers, or you can wait until the seed pods form, and those are a nice visual interest as well. Another foliage that I grew last year, which was also the first time for me, was Mahogany Splendor hibiscus, and that was another one. It was incredibly beautiful, and like the plant itself was incredibly beautiful. I had a bit of a difficult time kind of working it into things, but I really want to play around with it more because I think it could add a really dramatic effect. I did not anticipate the size that these plants got. They were massive. I put them right in the landscape and they quickly took over the whole space and started crowding out some shrubs. So we had to do some heavy cutting back on those. But yeah, they were fun. So I'm growing those again this year. Yeah, so that's kind of a snippet of what I have grown, what I am growing. I will share more as things progress. And thank you for joining me today.